One day when I came home after another night shift, I had my usual breakfast and, after checking my email, went to sleep on the sofa in the hall. I fell asleep pretty quickly. I don't know exactly how long I slept, but I was awakened by soft music. It was Russian radio, I realized from the announcer's comments. I couldn't immediately identify its source, but it was clear that this music was playing in my apartment. By the way, there was nothing else in my apartment except a computer and a TV set. But even assuming that they were turned on spontaneously, this is not an explanation, because on the PC I was listening to music through headphones and the TV does not have FM radio. Not wanting to get lost in speculation any longer, I note that I was lying facing the wall. I turned around and opened my eyes. I must say that I managed to do it with difficulty, especially to open my eyes. The veil on my eyes prevented me from seeing the room clearly. When my vision cleared up a little, I saw the following picture. Instead of my computer table, there was a usual polished one, and on it, an old Chinese tape recorder, from the speakers of which music was pouring out. At that moment, I could not even think that maybe everything that was happening was just a dream. Everything was too real, both visually and tactilely. But despite this, I felt no fear, but rather bewilderment. With great difficulty, I got up from the sofa. My legs were humming and felt like absorbent cotton. I went to the table and began to study the Chinese miracle. The volume knob reacted quite adequately to my manipulations with it, and the other controls were in good order. Then I started to study the other inconsistencies. I must admit that there were not so many of them. Other curtains, an old TV set, and a crystal vase. By the way, it was the same or similar to the one we had once had. I didn't even think about the fact that someone had stolen my computer with all the peripherals and replaced it with a miracle of Chinese technology in the form of a tape recorder. I couldn't wait to check the whole apartment for anomalies, so I went to the kitchen. When I stopped in front of the bathroom, I froze like a stumbling block. There was a mug right in the center of the kitchen table, and steam from freshly poured boiling water was coming from the mug. A wave of animal fear went through my body. I realized that I was not alone in the apartment, and this guest was definitely not my wife or any of my relatives or acquaintances, because the front door was locked by me personally, and there was no way to open it from the outside with a key. After a second, based on the above-mentioned facts, another thought came to me, that perhaps I myself was a guest here, but for obvious reasons I did not develop it. I had to get out of here as soon as possible. The next thing that happened was that everything inside me broke off. Someone, or something, turned on the water in the bathroom, just opposite to where I was standing. The squelching sounds of bare feet treading on the wet tile floor were the evidence that a person, or something, I don't know, was inside. The bathroom light was also on. Small streaks of light partially seeped through the gaps around the perimeter of the door. My daze was abruptly replaced by wild panic as I rushed to the front door, but the door had no locks, bolts, or even a handle, and yet it was locked. Panic and terror grew exponentially. Feeling like a hunted animal, I dashed to the balcony. I was willing to climb down or even jump from the third floor just to avoid meeting whoever or whatever was in the bathroom. When I pulled back the curtain, I breathed a sigh of relief. Behind the curtain was my usual balcony door with the usual window glass and the usual landscape behind it. My imagination, driven and fed by fear, had by then already managed to paint a picture where instead of glass, I would find brickwork. But my joy did not last long. The latch of the balcony door was still in place, but it would not budge, no matter how hard I tried. I also noticed that something strange was happening outside the window. A thick and unusually gray fog was quickly beginning to fill the space behind it. Desperate to open the door, I grabbed the crystal vase on the sideboard and threw it at the balcony window with all my might. I did not hear the expected sound of shattering glass. The vase seemed to fly through it and sank in a gray mist. A moment later, that same mist began to crawl into the room. I don't know why, but at that moment it seemed to me that it was alive and had a mind. In a second, the fog engulfed everything around me. The radio went silent, the sounds died down, and time seemed to stand still. I could see only the pale outlines of my own hands, which I held up to my eyes. I stood breathless, afraid that if I breathed in the fog, it would breathe in me. For some reason, I spontaneously came up with this strange thought. I felt absolutely helpless and trapped in a deadlock. On the one hand, an unknown guest from whom it was unclear what to expect, and on the other, a substance similar to the fog trying to eat me. And after another 10 seconds, when I began to feel a slight shortage of air, breaking the sepulchral silence, there was a loud hissing of the radio, as if someone began to turn the tuning knob. Then I heard the familiar sound of the bathroom door opening and the slow squelch of bare feet approaching. My condition was semi-fainting, unable to adequately assess the consequences of my further actions and completely losing control over myself. I took a deep breath. I woke up facing the wall on my couch, and for about a minute, I wondered if I was dead. Then I carefully rolled over and looked around the room. It was mine. Everything was in place. When I got up, I looked in the kitchen and then I visited the bathroom. No one was there. I was glad to be back in my apartment in my reality. I couldn't tell you how happy I was. Back in the hall, I pulled the curtains open and looked through the balcony glass. I felt a little nervous. There was a thick fog outside the window, but it was plain white, which calmed me down immediately. And I made such a conclusion. And yet, as it turned out, that gray fog, which instilled such horror in me, in the end turned out to be my savior, who took me out of the captivity of my alien apartment and the unknown guest, or host, and brought me back to my reality. Suddenly, a slogan from the movie The Matrix came to my mind. Ever had a dream that seemed real? What if you couldn't wake up? How would you know what is a dream and what is reality?